over the place. Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, excellent. Well, I want to welcome everybody to another author's view. We are here with Pearl Besserman, the author of Faye's Men. So Pearl was the recipient of the Theodore Hoffner Fiction Award and a past writer in residence. I am so not going to say this correctly.
Well, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a mouthful.
uh, and Pearl has been praised by Isaac Bashevis Singer for the clarity and feeling for mystic lore of her writing, and by Publishers Weekly for its wisdom that points to a universal practice of the heart. Her fiction includes novels Pilgrimage by Hal Mifflin, Kabuki Boy, Aqueous Books. I loved Kabuki Boy, by the way. And Widow Zion by Pinion Publishing. And the short story collection, Yeshiva Girl, Homebound Publishing. Now, Faye's Men. Faye's Men traces the adventures and misadventures of Faye Watkins, a Texas born dancer and spiritual seeker on the poignantly funny, circuitous path to self realization. Prompted by her naive, almost quixotic idealism, Faye's quest inspires hasty decisions in love and a disillusioning spiritual encounter that nearly knocks her off course. Undaunted, she boldly pursues her goal, journeying from home to an initiatory stint as a revolutionary in Mexico, then to New York, where she leaps into marriage with a wacky psychiatrist, then to an Israeli Zen center and a Japanese monastery, followed by a hilariously disastrous trip to Paris with her Zen master, and an unintended admission as a patient in the psychiatric ward of her husband's hospital, an experience that finally propels her to self discovery on a palm fringed beach in Hawaii. And
That's
with
a
that,
mouthful.
it's honestly, it's just like constantly going. How fabulous is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I just have to start with um, so what inspired you with Phase Men?
Okay. The reason that it's constantly going is it's a picaresque novel,
Hmm.
which is really, really based on Don Quixote,
Hmm.
Cervantes' Don Quixote.
Hmm.
I recently reread it. Actually, had to teach it at one point long ago when I was teaching the novel,
Hmm.
and it struck me. There was one book written about a female Quixote in the 18th century, but it was very, in some ways, very tame from my perspective,
Hmm.
and because Quixote is a really wild book.
Oh yeah.
Um, Stuff goes on there that, and the guy is supposedly mad, but how mad is he really? And
Mm,
I thought, I've known several women and share some of these qualities of these women
mhm,
that are just as interesting and out there as the Don himself, Don Quixote.
mhm,
And they're contemporary, and they all come from the same place, basically, which is where his craziness came from and his magic came from, which is reading romances, reading about heroes.
mm,
And I thought, I have been similarly raised on heroes. Um, from the time I was very little,
mhm,
I was it was indicated to me that I could be a hero, and I was a hero. It didn't matter that I was a girl.
mhm,
Girls are heroes too. I read Nancy Drew, for instance, and my favorite movie was and book was The Wizard of Oz. And there were plenty of wild girl heroes, but you had to kind of pick around to find them. That was
mm,
well before the big feminist waves of the earliest, and now the later ones are even clearly even more in your face. So
mm,
I said to myself, I have to really chronicle the story of a Doña Quixote.
mhm,
Um, a woman who is very idealistic, actually, and sets out to save the world, but also has this crazy crush on certain kinds of men
Mm,
who are not basically that good for her.
mhm,
Dulcinea was not very interested in the Don. She was far less beautiful and magical than he imagined her to be. And
mm,
that's pretty much what Faye does. She hero worships where she should be actually developing her own
mm,
strength of purpose. And she goes off thinking, like he does, like the Don does,
mhm,
thinking that out there, going out there and fighting windmills, and giants, and becoming a revolutionary and being violent and being heroic in the old sense of the knights in armor, that
mhm,
that's really what it is to be a hero. At the
mm,
same time, she has a very deep existential need for self realization, a
mm,
spiritual need. So it's not all just, pop guns and activities that make her cross the world in search of all kinds of adventures. It's got a very deep meaning. It's more, in some ways, it's more like Parsifal, that kind of
mhm,
hero, the hero who is really in search of the spiritual meaning of life, the
mhm,
existential question that sets him on the path. And hers comes out pretty early. She does have a strong spiritual push to all of this, which she mistakenly, and many people do go on spiritual, adventures, do
mhm,
go off. And sometimes they don't even make it back on the
mhm,
path. They really fall into the abyss. Um, and she's always on the brink of falling into the abyss, which is what gives it a kind of Perils of Pauline
mhm,
quality
mhm.
novel. Sometimes when I reread it, and I'm sitting there holding my breath, thinking, "Oh no, don't do that," you know. Um, which is how she came to me. She came really fully grown, full
Mm,
blown. I think partially because she's real in many ways, that she is composed of several women whom I've
mm,
known, two of whom are from Texas,
mhm,
were from Texas, which gives her a different kind of attitude than my own natural, Brooklyn born, New York quality. She's
mhm,
more naive in some ways than I ever was.
mhm,
Um, and so putting myself into that really made it a lot of fun to write because I was carried along by her. And that's the
mm,
best way to write, when you're not even aware that the story is carrying you, that the
mhm,
character is telling you everything. So it was almost like being on a stage, watching people on a stage enact this drama of this story, and
mm,
sometimes in a movie, because there was so much, cutting, cross-cutting, backstory.
mhm,
Um, so that's really where it came from. And recently looked at Don Quixote again and
mhm.
said, "Oh yeah, this is really the inspiration for this book." So there goes my long answer to a short question.
Oh, no, it's perfect. It's fabulous. So do you see Phase Men as being something where like there would be like follow-up stories, or do you feel like she's come to you complete?
Oh, that's an interesting question. A follow-up story? You mean like season two?
Or it could be a short story, it could be a full novel, it could be in a completely different forum, even you know uh to your point, you could write a screenplay for all I know.
Yeah. Well, this very naturally lends herself. She lends herself to a screenplay.
Mhm,
Actually, I did see her um, actually enacted by several different women. Um, I don't know why I got this idea in my head, but she reminded me of Michelle Dockery for some reason in some places. But I think if I would ever write something, follow up
Mhm.
something, it would be very different. It would be very different. I think
Hmm.
it would be maybe the story of a settled fae,
Mhm.
of a fae who was um, old,
Mm. Mhm.
uh, the kind of heroic older woman that I've
Mhm.
been reading about a lot.
Mhm.
I thought about fae and the boldness of certain older women when I just saw in the Times the other day. I saw Ms. Prada,
Mm.
on the Vogue cover of Vogue,
Mhm.
uh, very boldly without any makeup, being her age, which was I think 74.
Mhm.
And there's something interesting now for me, having grown older myself,
Mhm.
about the heroic older woman,
Hmm.
uh, without any glitz, without any makeup, but there's a very strong core. I just read about another woman, 93 years old,
Mhm.
uh, just gave all of her husband's money away to Albert Einstein Medical School so
Hmm.
that medical students could go to school for free without tuition. She gave something,
Wow.
$1 billion. You
Mm.
know, those kinds of bold acts of women that are really heroic and really meaningful, I
Mhm.
think show that the spirituality, what she learned there on the path,
Mhm.
uh, and what she actually accomplished, if you can actually accomplish anything, is is that the realization where true heroism is.
Mhm.
It's not there in the glitz and shine and celebrity,
Mhm.
uh, fancy jewelry, and it's not there.
Mhm.
And it's also not there in the ideas that I had when I first started. For example, when I first started Zen,
Mm.
uh, the idea of a woman samurai,
Mhm.
myself in black robes and carrying a stiff stick and wearing golden rakusu,
Mhm.
um, I saw other women fall for that, and that's sort of like the fake heroism of spiritual fulfillment.
Mm.
Uh, the real thing is pretty gritty
Mhm.
and not glamorous at all, and it's in the not glamour that I think I would describe what she ultimately came to understand and become.
Wow. Fabulous. And what, if anything, are you currently either working on or uh, you know, pondering for your next adventure?
Well, my next adventure has somehow been hanging around a long time. It was a nonfiction book,
Mhm.
creative nonfiction book, um, that came out of my experience teaching women's studies.
Mhm.
Um, and it's called Bimbo Feminism. And it actually, a section of it was just accepted
Oh,
by,
fabulous.
yeah, by Interim. It's a journal called Interim,
Okay.
and they're going to publish it in their print version and
Mm.
in the spring, I think.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much what's been going on in my mind a lot. I think I was somehow jolted into a kind of, I don't know, making comparisons. Probably not a good idea to make too many comparisons, but I was shocked by what I thought of as feminism turning
Mm.
into a kind of girly cult.
Okay.
Um, I don't understand. I still don't understand the Barbie phenomenon. I never
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that it's not important,
Mhm.
because as a girl, as a little girl, I never played with dolls. I didn't have dolls. My great joy in life was a red fire engine that my aunt and uncle bought me, that I used to drive around in the house and in the streets like a madcap. So the idea of the girliness and the pinkness of it all,
Mhm.
I couldn't watch Barbie because there was so much pink. It reminded me of Pepto Bismol. My mother made me drink when I had a bad stomach.
Mm,
So just looking at that kind of gives me a bad stomach. So I started to make these, I guess, invidious comparisons
mm,
between my own ideas about feminism and what I was doing when I was teaching women's studies
mhm,
and the kinds of women that I met on my path because I had traveled the world and I did a lot of journalism, writing about women at war, for
mhm,
instance, women in very unglamorous situations or heroic situations that, put them in danger,
mm,
including myself. I put myself in danger going around uh, that path. But um, I think what really inspired this bimbo feminism, which came out I started it in 2006, I think.
oh
Um,
boy. Mm,
yeah, and it's been kind of creeping along, but it's somehow reached its kind of harsh light in after the girly feminism cult,
mhm,
which is still pretty strong, I gather. I have no idea what's actually going on out there anymore, except with the Barbie. And I have a lot of difficulty now because all the young women in my family and the young women in my life, whom I dearly love, like Barbie. They love the movie. They like the phenomenon.
mhm,
They relate to it. So I'm thinking, okay, just say what you have to say about your take on things,
mhm,
because mine is much less romantic.
mm,
Uh, it has a lot to do with the kind of realism that I confronted in being with women
mhm,
who, for example, were like from Sierra Leone. I had a grad student from Sierra Leone who was fighting to stop female circumcision, for example.
mm,
Uh, these are big things, really
mhm,
scary. And her sister, who was a doctor, who was going through the country trying to stop this thing,
mm.
was actually destroyed by the government and put into a madhouse for her
Oh
effort.
my.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, these are things for me that are somehow they touch me much more deeply than Kim Kardashian's butt. you know,
I would imagine so, yes.
so, maybe I'm still on this path of really looking into the deep things, the important things, the
Mhm,
not just serious because they're funny too. They're poignant and they're funny, and lots of things that happen to Faye and that have happened to me, I see as humorous too.
mm,
But never lose your sense of humor. That's why I'm a Zen Buddhist,
mm.
because the wildest, craziest, of all the Buddhists, they never lose their sense of humor.
Ah,
Um, and I hope I never do either. And I think that combination of picaresque heroism, quote,
mhm,
wanting to save the world. And that is part of wanting to be a bodhisattva, which is one of the vows that you take when you're a Zen Buddhist, the
mhm,
bodhisattva vow. And I see myself as a really wannabe, really sort of half hearted, crooked little bodhisattva. Um, but a bodhisattva wannabe nonetheless. That's
mhm,
something that you want to do somehow. Somebody asked me once, what is the one thing that you would like to do or leave the world with? And I said, just a tiny bit of compassion, a
mm,
tiny bit of compassion. If you can just drop an eyedropper of that into this mass of suffering, I think then
mm.
you've done your job, you know. And I
Mhm.
think Faye has to realize that.
Mhm.
Um, and she doesn't, even by the end of the book. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. It's nobody's ever there. Nobody's ever there. The Buddha himself is still practicing, they say.
Mm.
So, you know, I don't like closure. I don't like when people say, oh, well, let's put closure on this. No, I
Mhm.
don't believe in closure.
Got it. Wow, that's amazing. Well, for those watching, definitely look for Pearl's wonderful novel, Faye's Men. It will be out April 1st of this year. And with that, I want to thank Pearl for such a phenomenal interview. So, as always, it is truly, truly a pleasure.
Same here.